Okay, we are in chapter 11, which is emerging adulthood. We are no longer an adolescent, but we are not yet a full-fledged adult. Ages of 18 to 25. It used to be considered part of adulthood, but now everyone pretty much accepts that it's its own developmental stage. It's also called youth or young adulthood. During this time, we're usually in pretty good health. Our bodies are strong and active, and our body systems are at the optimal functioning level. Any childhood diseases that were prevalent, we've kind of outgrown by now. And if there are any chronic issues like diabetes, we know how to handle them better now, so we can manage them better. And we're usually living healthier by this point in time. We also have what's called the organ reserve, which is the extra capacity to get extra power when needed. So if you're going to exercise or do anything that requires extra oxygen or anything like that, our body has the capacity to have that extra burden and take it on. Homeostasis is a happy, steady state that our body has, and it's usually within narrow ranges, so our bodies like to have a certain level of glucose and certain calcium level, potassium level, and so on. So what happens is as we get older, it takes longer for our bodies to maintain and restore homeostasis when there's an imbalance. So the younger we are, the more efficient and effective we are at maintaining homeostasis. Allostasis are the long-term adjustments that have to be made. And it kind of leads to an allostatic load, which is the overall impact that builds up over time of this extra capacity and extra burden. Over time, our organ reserve has a tendency to shrink, so it's harder to recover from things. So when you're 20 years old and you run a marathon, it's a lot easier to recover than if you're 50 years old and run that same marathon. So adequate deep sleep is very important at this point in time. Over the years, you require less and less sleep, but we have a tendency to increase our weights, increase depression, and accidents can happen more often. And if you don't get enough sleep, it's going to decrease your energy, decrease your health over time, and your life expectancy in the long run. So adequate deep sleep is very important for our body health, basically. Proper nutrition, our appetite has a tendency to adjust over time. So we kind of get used to requiring as many calories as we need to survive and do whatever we're doing. So it really depends on how active you are. But like I said, it has a tendency to adjust over time. And exercise, of course, is very important. Your coronary artery risk of development in adulthood is what CARDIA stands for. And it was basically a longitudinal study that looked at 18 to 30-year-olds and then re-examined them 7 years and 20 years later. And what they found was that the least fit individuals to start out with had a higher risk of diabetes and high blood pressure in middle age than those who were relatively fit at the beginning of the study. So you don't really notice it when you're in your 20s because of this organ reserve that we have and the fact that our bodies are in peak health. But that allostatic load I just talked about has a tendency to increase with these things. So it builds up over time, and that's when you're going to really see the effects. So when you're in your 20s, you still might feel great, but if you don't make sure that you're exercising and eating properly and getting enough sleep, by the time you hit your 50s and 60s, you're at a higher risk for coronary artery disease. And coronary artery disease is a killer. So we have to make sure that we try to maintain a healthy balance in a nutshell. So, teenage pregnancy is now a problem. It used to be a blessing, actually. So we no longer have shotgun weddings, really. We have effective contraception, but we do have this unmarried pregnancy acceptance that's happening. Years ago, teenage pregnancies were almost shunned to an extent, and teenage pregnancies, they had to be sent away to have the baby kind of thing. But before that, it was actually encouraged, because the younger you married, the more kids you could have, and with a shorter life expectancy at that point in time, it kind of made sense. Now we have a longer life expectancy, so we no longer need to have children at such a young age. So we can use contraception, and we no longer insist on, if you do get pregnant, you have to get married. That doesn't really happen so much anymore. There's more of an acceptance now. However, with this, we have a rise in sexually transmitted infections, or STDs, STIs, infection versus disease, same thing. There's actually been a global spread because we now have transportation. So we can go from one area of the U.S. to another area of the U.S. and travel. So with travel comes the spread of diseases. HIV and AIDS actually started out confined to one city in the Congo, and with the development of the railroads, HIV traveled along with the railroads. So transportation advances have almost made sure that diseases do not stay local anymore. Now they're kind of globally widespread. Risk-taking can be an asset or it can be a liability. Taking a risk and starting your own business, for example, could be a good thing. But taking a risk and dropping out of college could be a bad thing. Or taking a risk and running in a drag race could be a bad thing. So what we see is emerging adults actually have more serious accidents than people of any other age. So we're kind of brave but foolish at the same time. Extreme sports, for example. Extreme sports are pretty dangerous, and sports in general are kind of dangerous, but this is the age that people are playing sports. So maturation is what actually affects risk assessment as opposed to experience, because you can have all the experiences in the world. It's not going to matter. It's how mature you are, that how you handle taking risks. As I said, sometimes they could be good, going to college, taking a risk, opening a business. Other times it can be bad. Drugs, unprotected sex, extreme sports, not wearing seatbelts, things like that. So drug abuse is officially defined as ingestion of a drug to the extent that it impairs the user's either biological or psychological well-being. So it could mess with your bodily functions or your mind, your psychological functions. And when you abuse a drug, doesn't mean you're an addict. Drug abuse itself is the ingestion. Becoming an addict is a step further. Illegal drug use usually peaks around the age of 20 and then goes down sharply as we get older. So we have a low rate of diseases between 18 and 25, but that's counterbalanced with a high rate of violent death because of driving without seatbelts or carrying loaded guns, drug abuse, gambling addicts. So yeah, disease goes down, but high violent death goes up. Fatal accidents, homicides, and suicides result in more deaths than all others combined. So this is kind of a dangerous age in a nutshell. Many colleges actually restrict alcohol on campus. Drug abuse is more frequent among college students than those not in college, partly because they kind of urge each other to drink and egg each other on, so to speak. Binge drinking, again, kind of talked about that today in class. 5 or more drinks on one occasion, 4 or more for women. That definition, it's kind of relative if you think about it, because binge drinking is basically drinking one night here, one night there, one night here, one night there. You're not necessarily an alcoholic because you do not need alcohol every day. But when you drink to excess. So you drink more than you should. So as I said, illegal drug use peaks about age of 20 and then decreases with age. Most who continue after 25 actually want to quit. This is a look at substance abuse at various ages. So the blue is the binge drinking, red is current cigarette smokers, and green is illegal drug use. So as you can see, it kind of peaks around age 20 and then goes down pretty significantly by the time they're 65 and older. The proposed adult stage of cognitive development is postformal thought. When you look at Piaget's 4 stages, this kind of goes beyond adolescent thinking into more practical, more flexible, less impulsive and reactive thinking. So you actually stop to think. You're capable of combining contradictory thoughts and kind of coming out on the other side with a comprehensive whole thought. So you can look at all sides of the equation. You can combine everything and get the big picture, so to speak. Postformal thinkers use formal analysis to learn science and argue and resolve world's problems. So they're less impulsive than adolescents, and they don't wait for someone to present a problem in order to solve it or for circumstances to require a reaction. So postformal thinkers are more flexible and have a more comprehensive approach. So they're, trying to save the world, so to speak. We're trying to make the world a better place. Some actually say adulthood doesn't need stages because you're not necessarily gaining anything new intellectually speaking. However, we're becoming a more complete package at this point. The stereotype threat is a fear that someone else will judge your appearance or behavior negatively, and then that's going to then confirm their prejudiced attitudes against you. So a stereotype threat is when you're afraid someone's going to judge you in a bad way and then confirm the fact that they were prejudiced against you in the first place. So the mere possibility of being negatively stereotyped gets your anxiety up and can actually disrupt your cognition and your emotional regulation. So now it's going to disrupt your thought processes and how well you hold your emotions and control yourself. So this makes people of all ages doubt their ability. And that's going to reduce learning if their anxiety gets so bad that it interferes with their thought processes. So African American men have lower grades in high school and than African American females. They do not get as many degrees as African American females. So it's kind of like they're afraid that somebody's going to judge them because they're a male. So why bother, in a nutshell? And that's not a good thing. As I kind of said in class today, we have to break these stereotypes. We have to get rid of these stereotypes and make sure that adolescents and emerging adults know that they can be whatever they want to be. It's kind of up to them. It's kind of like book smart versus street smart. Some people say that I'm book smart, but I don't have any common sense. Others would say somebody has a lot of common sense, but they don't have book smarts. But the bottom line is that you can really have both, and, it's okay. So most contemporary students attend college to make sure that their future is sound and secure. They want a better job. They want more money. College also correlates with better health. College graduates smoke less, eat better, and exercise more, and live longer in general. So tertiary education actually improves our abilities and our skills in specific areas that we study. And it also helps us with reasoning and reflection. So we can kind of become these complete thinkers. Massification is the idea that establishing higher learning institutions and trying to get people to enroll in college could benefit everyone. So basically it looks at the more people we can get going to college, the better our world's going to be. And it's actually leading to increases in the number of emerging adults in college. The U.S. actually leads the number of college graduates, but other nations actually have increased their college funding while the U.S. has decreased it. So kind of makes you wonder. We were the first nation to endorse massification with state-funded universities in all states. Often we have more than one per state, but as I said, other countries are actually increasing the college fundraising, but the U.S. is decreasing it. Or funding, sorry, not fundraising, funding. So it makes you wonder. Most adults think college is too expensive. 94% of parents expect their children to go to college. 75% of adults believe college is costly. So it kind of comes into play where you have to determine, is it worth going to college? Is it worth the student loans or working 3 jobs to try to make sure that you can complete college? Is it going to be worth it on the long run? The bottom line is, most of the time, college pays off. Master's degree students earn 2 times more money than high school graduates. So it's shown that if you get a master's degree or even a PhD, you can make more money than if you don't go to college at all. However, attendance at college doesn't mean that you're going to graduate college. So there's a huge difference. You need to make sure that you complete your degree and actually get it. Even if it's just an associate's degree, you're here, finish it, get it. The lowest graduation rate colleges are the most popular, and oftentimes it can be because of partying and things like that. And student loan payback can be daunting. When you look at how much in student loans you have and then how much those payments are, it's incredible. It's a lot. Some people have student loan payments of over $1,000 a month. So when you look at those statistics, it can be a scary thing to decide to go to college because, how are you going to pay for it? When you look at people of different ethnic backgrounds and ages, their experiences can lead to intellectual challenge and deeper thought. So we have postformal thinkers and friends that, when you have friends from other backgrounds, you're more likely to, think about college in different ways. You're not going to focus so much on how much money it costs and how are you going to pay this back and all of that. You're going to look at the benefits and you're going to look at the bigger picture, how much you're going to make in the long run. So diversity is actually a really good thing in college. We want to encourage diversity. And diversity of any kind can actually advance cognition. It's increased in colleges across the U.S., and emerging adults actually expand their minds when they have honest conversations with people from all different backgrounds. We want to encourage diversity, and you should also try to make friends with as many people from different backgrounds as you possibly can. Have conversations with these people. You can actually get different perspectives, different points of view, listen to different experiences. And we are now more accepting of these differences because we know them. So it's actually a really good thing. Identity achievement, again, we talked about this. The search for identity that began at puberty continues on. Most emerging adults are still trying to figure out who they are. Erickson basically believed that the outcome of earlier crises provides foundation for the new era. So resolve this crisis, figure out who you are, however long it takes, you'll get there, and then move on from there. All 4 identity statuses are evident in emerging adulthood. We talked about these as well. Achievement, when you know what you want to do and you're set and you figured it out and you're working and doing that. Foreclosure, remember, was when you just blindly accept what your parents do and say and you don't experience new things and explore anything new. Moratorium, remember, is when you delay making those decisions. So you go to college or join a band or join the military. And then diffusion is when you have no idea what you want to do and you really don't care. So we can see emerging adults in all 4 of these areas. In developed nations, it's kind of normal for emerging adults to question who they are. Sex, vocation, politics, and religion used to be what was focused on, and it still kind of is to an extent, but really emerging adults need to get this identity achievement and figure out what it is they want to do. Many young adults change their identity status in the years after 25, almost all by the age of 29. So by the age of 29, most individuals kind of have it figured out. They became deeper and more reflective, and it actually meant something to them. So determination to have it all is kind of part of the identity achievement of many young adults. Many young adults want money, fame, family, careers, they want it all. And that's not unusual, and that's okay. You just have to work to get there. Vocational identity, establishing that as part of growing up, so this is your career, what you want to do with the rest of your life. This is a critical stage for the acquisition of resources and to develop your work values and your ethics. Usually emerging adults change jobs about every year, and this has actually affected the economic recession to an extent. But again, back in the day, figuring out what you wanted to do with your life early on was pretty critical because life expectancy wasn't that great. Now our life expectancy is a lot longer, so we can take our time trying to figure out what it is we want to do and try out different things. Research finds continuity and improvements in attitudes and self-esteem during emerging adulthood. We have a positive trend of increasing happiness, and that's a good thing. Young adults are actually more likely to make their own life decisions as opposed to relying on their parents to guide them, or not guide them, but relying on their parents to tell them what to do. So self-esteem going up is a huge part and a good part of what's happening with emerging adults today. Plasticity is the ability to change. So we have continuity and we have change in personality traits. Traits that are strongly present at age 5 or 15 don't just go away when you turn 25, but with the fact that emerging adults are more open to experiences and they try to, that's what I'm looking for. They try to investigate new things and experiment. That's what I'm looking for. They experiment with new things. So this allows personality shifts, and once they get more education, it kind of allows them to finally establish who they are. So this total transformation isn't just because of genes or experiences. It's kind of a combination. Family circumstances can affect people. But again, it's a combination of everything that we have going on. Erikson's 6th psychosocial stage, intimacy versus isolation, kind of emphasizes the fact that we are social beings in general. And intimacy is going to lead to attraction, which will hopefully lead to connections being made and commitments. Marriage and parenthood, as emerging adults are discovering, are only 2 of the paths to intimacy. We can, cohabitate, or we can just date. We can have, children and families and not necessarily be married. You can consider pets as children. There's a lot of different pathways that we can take. Parents continue to be a crucial influence even after 18. All members of the family are kind of linked together. Excessive parental support, though, may have a downward spiral effect, basically. So you want to make sure that you're supporting your children, but letting them be themselves as well. Living with the parents, emerging adults, their happiness when living with parents, it kind of depends on the economy and on the culture. Almost all unmarried young adults in Italy and Japan stay with their childhood homes. Fewer so much in the U.S. if they can afford to live on their own. But a lot of the problem with emerging adulthood is you do not have your career established yet. so you're not making as much money as you will be. So a lot of times either you're living in the dorms on college campus or with your parents, unfortunately. Friendship has a very functional significance at this point. We have self-expansion, which of course is just going to allow you to explore yourself, figure out who you are, and be who you want to be. Mutuality is when it's reciprocated, so your friends are kind of giving you what you need and you're giving them what they need. Social media is going to be big. Social media is a lot of the ways that we keep in contact with our friends now. So we have this social media experience that half of the time you talk to people that you haven't seen in years, and yet it seems like you're talking to them every day because it's easier to stay in contact now. Women are usually more intimate and emotional and talk about their feelings, so self-disclosure is pretty evident. Men, however, usually don't touch each other very much and don't really talk about their feelings or anything like that. So male and female friendships are actually quite different from each other. In the U.S., romantic competence is multifaceted, which basically means that you have this mutual caring, this trust, this closeness, and sensitivity to the needs of others. You try to be faithful, loyal, and honest. And love American style is kind of sought in some other countries, so they kind of want to be more like us to an extent. So most emerging adults are postponing marriage. They want to get married someday, but not right now. Hooking up and friends with benefits are becoming more common. Like, those terms were hardly ever used before. Now they're pretty common. Marriage is still considered crucial by a lot of different couples, so a lot of people still believe in marriage, and a lot of people still think that marriage should happen. It's just a matter of when it should happen. Social networks and dating sites, again, keeping in contact with people that you wouldn't have had contact with before. Actually, 1/3 of all U.S. marriages started on social network or dating sites like eHarmony, Match.com. And again, it connects you with people all over the world that you wouldn't have had contact with before. Sometimes, though, having so many options makes a thoughtful choice difficult, so you don't know who to pick, so to speak. And sometimes after you make a choice, you're going to regret it, and that's actually more likely to happen because of the fact that there are so many people that we can get in contact with now. Cohabitation, as I said, is another option, so living with an unrelated person, usually someone you're involved with and you're not married to. Most young adults in the U.S. cohabitate and don't want to get married before they're 25. In other nations like Japan, Ireland, and Italy, though, fewer people actually cohabitate. So marriage is still important. Not that marriage isn't important in the U.S., but marriage before you live with somebody kind of thing. So cohabitation before marriage doesn't present the marital problems that exist. So just because you live with somebody, you think you know them better, but it doesn't prevent real-world problems from happening in a marriage. Meta-analysis actually showed that cohabitation was linked to a higher likelihood of divorce. So you live together for 10 years and then finally get married, you're actually more likely to get divorced. You're less likely to pool your money because you still want to keep your separate stuff. You're less likely to have close parental relationships or care for any parental health needs. So these individuals are more likely to not have that bond. However, most research is based on people who cohabitated 10 to 20 years ago. So it really needs to be updated is the point. So the broadest picture is every human of every cohort and culture benefits from satisfying and enduring relationships. So the whole point really is to make sure that you are, in a loving relationship. You want to make sure you're happy. You want to make sure you're getting what you need out of it, or there's really kind of no need for it. And that is all.